Ben, Lucci, and Eddie. Today we are talking about coaching for the team. And I'm not just talking about coaching the actual team. We're talking about how do we coach leadership and product owners to work with the team instead of making decisions that without getting the team's approval or input. And how do we empower teams through the leadership by coaching them to work with the teams? So with that, I'm going to toss it over to the group, and I want to hear about your experiences with leadership or product owners who initially think that their decision is the end all be all and that the team doesn't need to say anything about it.
I had a conversation with a coach today who was talking about his frustration in the teams wanting to give themselves fun names. And they're working in Jira, and Jira doesn't really have a hierarchy that says, where teams are in an organization. So the coach is like, well, if you name yourself like the Wonka Doodle Doos, then how's anyone going to know what you do? Right? They're not going to know what kind of a team you are. So they're not going to know, they're looking at the list. They're like, oh, I have to go to the database account team. And they're just like, what the hell is Wonka Doodle Doodle? But the teams were bummed out because they wanted to have a fun name.
I would argue really what's in a name, right? Like some team names, even if they are called database team or support or whatever it is that a team could be named in any given company, it doesn't always describe what they do exactly. So, sure, Wonkadoodle-doo might be really absurd, but maybe it was the Wonkadoodle database. Like there could be a compromise, right?
You could argue that the name absolutely shouldn't represent what they do because they shouldn't be constrained to their identity around a system. Their identity is around themselves as a team and what they want to express. So it's both you're both stealing their identity and you're constraining further growth. If you wanted to argue that,
do you?
I think Ben, how would you approach? I'm curious, like with Lear's situation, what would you tell that person? Like, how would you coach them to see your side?
Well, it's interesting. You opened the thing about how coaches can empower managers to empower teams, and we're now talking about a coach. So this coach should really know better, I'm going to say. But I think the point is, it's the secondary level of performance and of happiness and motivation and drive, right? So it may save you 2 seconds cross-referencing Wonka Doodles to what they do, and wow, I've saved you 2 seconds having to look at what they do, but you're making that team happier, and they're going to deliver more story points. They're going to feel more involved. They're going to feel like they own their process, like they own their destiny. So in many instances, whether it's this coach in this example or management or other people, product owners in an organization, looking past what's an optimization quite often for that one person to how do we optimize the whole, how do we optimize the delivery, the quality, the happiness, is really the way that I would try and coach it and think, okay, where are you going to be better off? Are you going to be better off saving 2 seconds looking up a name, or are you going to be better off if this team is happier and delivering for you?
It's really interesting. First of all, I'd like to mention then what does a Wonkadoodle do would be a great title for a Dr. Seuss book. And if you Googled it, maybe there is one, you can go down a rabbit hole. What's interesting for me is kind of trying to understand the motivations, right? Because if you're trying to influence people in any way, you have to understand where they're coming from, what's driving them. What do you guys think, whether it's a coach or a manager, what kind of motivations lead people to lose sight of what's best for the team and start thinking in this other kind of way?
Well, it's a balance, right? So there's a certain level of freedom that you want to allow teams to have, but then there needs to be structure and guardrails around it so that things make sense. And I think that's a struggle. I think finding that balance is something that is different for every environment and every team. And that's why, when we talk about using integral theory, it's taking in all of those elements. It's taking in those needs from a 4-quadrant perspective. So we're not just saying, from a lower right perspective, our structures need to be compatible with each other so that I could parse like exactly where this is going to go. But there's the relationship side of it, and there's the pride, feeling good about what you're doing part of it. And you need to take the temperature. of the environment around you and see where the need is.
And for me, it is also important that the team and the leader has a clear understanding of the purpose of the team, what they want to achieve, because that brings alignment. And if there's other things that maybe, and also, sorry, it encourages as well self-management. So for me, it is important that the team is able to self-manage with a certain guideline from the leader. If the purpose is clear and the goals are clear, then they can self-manage, but everybody is aligned on the same track. And if that happens, I think that there's more freedom, as Leo was saying, and at the same time, there's synergy towards a common goal.
That makes a lot of sense. I personally had something come up at work recently where a new product owner wanted to change a naming convention in the tool and came to me first to get my input. And I immediately said, well, what do you think the team thinks? We should maybe check in with them. And it is such a small thing that he was suggesting, but I'm curious, how would you coach someone like that in understanding why it's important to ask the team for something like that? Like I tried to convey very quickly on Slack, and we have a meeting coming up, but I'm trying to prepare myself and like, how do I tell him why it's important to get the team's input and why that's important for his relationship building with the team, since he's also a new product owner?
I work with product owners who believe, who actually it's probably easier to say it the other way around. I work with product owners who don't believe that building trust and aligning people both kind of around the specifics of a product, but around the intent and the drive towards a product, who don't value that. So they don't value it in gaining opinion. They don't value it when it comes to work-life balance. They don't value it from a whole bunch of things. And it's very hard to convince some people who've worked in very traditional ways. So if you think about project management and load them up to 150%, and even if they fail, they'll still hit 100% type thing. It's very hard to convince those people that actually respecting the team and building a relationship will lead to them hitting and exceeding 100% what they would have done under your older approach. I've worked with teams where when they've built trust with those around them, in this case, the product owner, where they've built trust, they go the extra mile. Like if they need to get something done, it's not a case of the product owner telling them it must get done. It's them realizing that something must get done, working in the evening or at the weekend in special occasions when they want to make sure the whole group succeeds. So I think it's, how do you describe that camaraderie, that flow, that motivation to someone who's never experienced it before? Like if the product owner has never been in that position, how do you say, trust me, build respect, and in 6 months this team will outperform what you would have ever hoped for? That's the difficult thing, I think.
And I'm gonna go ahead. This is a big integral video for me. I'm bringing another integral thing into it. It depends on the culture at large. My understanding of the story I told you about the coach is the culture is amber. It's a scenario in which, Ben, what you described about people, getting inspired and being proactive and taking this on. It's something that I don't think the culture supports in this environment. So I can understand where he was coming from inside of that cultural environment. Just wanted to throw that out there, to be aware of the cultural elements. And if you try to put something in place that's a mismatch against the culture you have in place, despite best intentions, it might still fail.
It is very hard to explain to someone how, I use the word magical. It could be when a team trusts the product owner trusts the team. It really is an incredible thing to experience. And I'm lucky enough to have been on teams where I was able to coach to that point. And it really does it could sound crazy to someone who's never experienced it, Ben, to your point. But I guess what wording would you use to someone who hasn't? Like if you had one shot to get someone on board who's new, who I can tell is looking for guidance here, who I don't think wants to lead with command and control. I'm curious how you would explain that.
I think in this instance, I mean, like the one word or the quick phrase I would use is trust me. Like, let's start right now from a position of trust. Trust me. Like, this is my job, this is my profession, this is my experience. Trust me. Like, you trust the dentist when you go to the dentist, you trust the doctor when you go to the doctor. Trust me. I've done this before. I've seen things work. I think in other instances where the story sounds too good to be true, like it's coming from Alana to product owner. Of course, she's going to say that because she likes the team and she wants me to be nice to the team or something like that. Get them to go and seek out another product owner. In many organizations, there will be product owners who operate in different kind of different modes of operation. Go and find one who is building trust, who is consulting with the team, and get them to talk to that person and say, have you really seen outperformance? Like, when you allow them to make their own choices, are they taking ownership of that? Are they outperforming, or is this just a nice fairy tale? Because I know in organizations, although Leo's, the culture sets the tone, there are still examples of better and worse behavior, and seek out the better behavior and suggest, look, if you don't trust me, go and talk to them, see what's happening.
That's a great point. It's very simple. Just trust me. It starts with just trust me. Trust me on this one. I've seen it before. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's what all coaches say though. So that's another topic for another podcast or YouTube.
But I mean it this time. This time I really mean it.
You gotta get Ben to teach us all to be charming so it works as well for us as it does for him.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm actually sincerely going to use that piece of advice for my next conversation with this person. So this was very beneficial. So thank you all, Lior, Ben, Lucci, Eddie. Thank you so much. And let us know in the comments below your experience with coaching, and tell us what you think about how to work with leadership and teams and to get them to understand how to empower their teams where they are. Thanks.